You may have noticed that the harder you push toward a desired outcome, the more subtle tension appears beneath the effort, not failure. Friction. This is where most conversations about manifestation begin pointing in the wrong direction without ever meaning to. They invite you to look outward to define a future, to picture it vividly, to aim your attention like a beam. And for a while, that focus feels productive. But underneath, something else is happening. When attention is trained primarily on what is not yet here, the nervous system registers absence before possibility. The body senses distance. The field reads separation, not as punishment, as information. Traditional manifestation often treats reality like a vending machine, assuming clarity of desire is enough to prompt delivery. Yet what actually communicates with the field is not the request itself, but the state of the one requesting, the signal behind the thought. This is where resistance quietly forms, not because wanting is wrong, but because wanting from a fragmented inner position broadcasts mixed coherence. One part reaching forward, another part bracing against now. You can feel this if you slow the frame, the subtle tightening in the chest while visualizing, the urgency tucked inside hope, the unspoken assumption that something essential is missing. These sensations are not mistakes. They are mirrors. They reveal that manifestation has never been an external process attempting to pull reality closer. It has always been a relational process reflecting who you are being while you desire. And this is the missing piece most systems overlook. Reality does not respond to what you want in isolation. It responds to the version of you generating the wanting, the internal posture, the baseline identity, the coherence or lack of it moving through your body as you imagine. When this is unseen, effort increases. Visualization intensifies, affirmations multiply, yet the signal remains split. This isn't a flaw in your discipline or belief. It's simply a misorientation of attention. Because the moment manifestation is approached as an external chase, the mirror has already turned away. Once the chase loosens, something quieter becomes visible beneath the motion. A background condition you've been standing in the whole time. Not an intention, a state. This is where attention naturally turns not outward toward what might arrive, but inward toward what has already been broadcasting. Because before any desire forms, before language names a goal, there is already a version of you inhabiting the moment. And that version is never neutral. You are always signaling, not deliberately, continuously. The field does not wait for clarity statements or visual rehearsals. It responds to coherence, to the internal environment your nervous system maintains as default. This is the co-creator rarely acknowledged because it doesn't feel like action. It feels like normal. The way your body holds time, the way expectation lives in your breath, the way identity quietly answers the question, who am I being right now, without words. Most manifestation practices skip this layer entirely, assuming desire is the engine. But desire is downstream. It emerges from identity, not the other way around. If the internal state carries contraction, even beautifully imagined futures will be filtered through that lens. If the baseline identity is oriented around waiting effort or proving those qualities shape what can organize around you, not symbolically, energetically. This is not about blame or correction. It's about noticing the order of operations. The system responds to who you are inhabiting before it responds to what you are asking. Always has. And once that is seen, something softens. Because the work was never about pushing the signal harder, it was about recognizing the signal already in play. You may notice how identity behaves like a tuning fork. It doesn't chase resonance, it sets tone. Reality arranges itself around the dominant frequency you live inside, not the one you visit briefly through imagination. This is why effort-heavy manifestation often produces intermittent results. bursts followed by collapse. The visit ends. The default returns. Identity pressure isn't loud, it's subtle. It's the sense of who you assume yourself to be when nothing is being attempted. And this is where acceleration becomes possible, not through doing more, but through alignment becoming quieter and deeper. There's a paradox here worth sitting with. The less you try to convince reality, the more clearly reality can read you. The clearer the signal, the less force required. Not because the universe rewards ease, but because coherence carries information efficiently. You don't manifest from the surface of your thoughts. You manifest from the depth of your state. When this is recognized, attention naturally withdraws from chasing outcomes and begins resting inside the question of embodiment. What version of you is currently occupying your days? What assumptions feel invisible because they feel familiar? What emotional climate feels normal even when it's heavy? This is not analysis, it's detection. And detection changes everything because it removes the illusion that manifestation is something you perform occasionally. It reveals it as something you are already doing continuously, whether consciously or not. There is a quiet relief here, because nothing new needs to be added, only noticed. Once identity is seen as the primary signal, effort loses its authority. Control softens, curiosity takes its place. And from here, the mirror can finally be approached not as a tool to get something, but as a surface that reflects who you have been standing in all along. If identity is already shaping the signal, then the next tension appears almost immediately. What exactly is doing the reflecting? This is where the idea of the quantum mirror emerges, not as a technique, but as a way of noticing the relationship already in motion. Because reality has never been a blank surface, waiting for instruction. It has always been responsive. The mirror does not ask what you want. It reflects who you are being while you want it. That distinction changes everything. When people hear the word mirror, they often imagine something passive, something that merely shows an image. But this mirror is participatory. It responds to coherence, to resonance, to the quality of presence you inhabit before thought arrives. You are not standing in front of it, you are standing inside it. The quantum mirror is not a place you go. It is the relational field between your internal state and the external patterns organizing around you. A feedback loop, a conversation without language. And this is why effort-based manifestation feels like shouting into glass. The mirror isn't responding to volume, it's responding to clarity. When identity is fragmented, the reflection appears inconsistent, not because the mirror is broken, but because the signal is layered. One part of you imagining expansion, another part bracing for disappointment. Both are reflected. This is where frustration often arises. You feel aligned in moments, hopeful, even inspired, yet reality seems slow to respond. What's usually happening is not delay, but fidelity. The mirror is reflecting the whole signal, not just the conscious preference. The quantum mirror does not prioritize intention over embodiment. It reads the body, the breath, the emotional baseline, the subtle assumptions that never make it into affirmations. It reflects the version of you that feels most real, not the one that feels most desired. And this is not a flaw in the system, it's the elegance of it. Because if reality responded only to surface intention, coherence would be impossible to stabilize. The mirror would fragment endlessly. Instead, it responds to what is most consistent. You may begin to notice that the mirror becomes clearer the less you try to manipulate it. Not because control is wrong, but because control adds layers, and layers blur reflection. This is the quiet paradox at the heart of accelerated manifestation. The mirror sharpens when you stop asking it to change and start noticing what it's already showing. The moment attention shifts from outcome to resonance, the reflection reorganizes. not dramatically, gradually. The quantum mirror does not reward effort, it reveals alignment. And once this is seen, the relationship changes. You stop performing for the mirror and begin listening to it. You start noticing patterns as feedback rather than obstacles. You recognize that every external response is information about internal coherence. This isn't about judging what appears, it's about reading it accurately. Because the mirror has been honest the entire time. It has been reflecting the deepest signal available. And now, instead of trying to override the reflection, you're beginning to sense the source. At a certain point, clarity brings an unexpected discomfort, not because something is wrong, but because something familiar no longer feels true. When the mirror begins reflecting more honestly, distortions become easier to detect. Not as dramatic flaws, as quiet inconsistencies. This is where conditioning reveals itself, not as a story you remember, but as a posture you still carry. Past experiences, early environments, and repeated adaptations don't disappear just because awareness grows. They linger as default settings shaping how identity feels inside the body. Most of these patterns were never chosen. They were learned through survival, through belonging, through making sense of uncertainty. Over time, they became normal, and what feels normal rarely gets questioned. The mirror reflects these learned identities with remarkable precision, not the narratives you tell about yourself, but the assumptions operating beneath them, the subtle ways you brace before receiving, the hesitation woven into anticipation, the invisible ceiling that feels like realism rather than limitation. This is why self-perception is often the most distorted surface of all. You don't see the pattern because you're inside it. You experience it as just how things are. The quantum mirror doesn't argue with these identities. It doesn't correct them. It simply reflects them back through circumstance, timing, and repetition. And here's the paradox. The more you attempt to change the reflection, without recognizing the identity behind it, the more effort is required. Not because change is difficult, but because misalignment demands compensation. Conditioned identity fragments the signal in subtle ways, one layer reaching for expansion, another maintaining familiarity, both transmitting simultaneously. This creates a reality that feels inconsistent, progress followed by stall, opportunity followed by withdrawal, not as punishment but as coherence, matching coherence. You may notice that certain desires feel charged with urgency, while others feel calm and alive. This difference matters. Urgency often signals identity friction, a place where conditioning and authenticity overlap without agreement. The mirror reflects that friction faithfully. Distorted self-perception doesn't announce itself as distortion. It presents as practicality, as humility, as patience. But beneath it, there's often a quiet contraction, a holding back that once made sense and no longer does. The body remembers even when the mind has moved on. This is not about dismantling your past or labeling patterns as wrong. It's about recognizing that what kept you safe may no longer be what keeps you coherent. The mirror becomes invaluable here, not as a judge, but as a diagnostic surface. It shows you where identity is inherited rather than inhabited, where choices are default rather than deliberate. You don't need to confront these patterns aggressively. In fact, force only reinforces them. Recognition is enough to loosen their grip, because conditioning survives on unconsciousness, not strength. As awareness deepens, these identities begin to feel slightly off, not painful, just misaligned. And that sensation is important. It signals that the mirror is no longer reflecting who you were trained to be, but who you are capable of becoming. Not as an upgrade, as a return. This is where the work subtly shifts, not toward fixing distortion, but toward sensing what feels original beneath it. The mirror is still reflecting, but now it's inviting you to notice the difference between familiarity and truth. Once distortion is seen, another layer quietly asks for attention, not loudly, almost shyly. If some desires feel strained and others feel alive, then something deeper is differentiating them. This is where recognition begins, not as decision, but as sensation. Authentic desire doesn't arrive with urgency. It doesn't shout or negotiate. It feels steady even when it stretches you. You may notice that certain wants feel heavy the moment you imagine them fulfilled. They carry expectation, comparison, or relief baked in. Others feel oddly neutral in thought, yet expansive in the body. That difference matters. Inherited desire often arrives already loaded with context. It carries a story about who you would become if it arrived, or who you would finally stop being. Its energy is conditional. Authentic desire feels different. It doesn't require an audience. It doesn't need justification. It feels like recognition rather than pursuit. The quantum mirror reflects this distinction with precision. When desire is borrowed, the signal fragments. When desire is authentic, coherence increases without effort. This isn't about purity, it's about resonance. Your deepest self carries a specific vibrational signature, not as concept, but as lived frequency. It shows up in how your body responds before thought explains it. A softening, a settling, a quiet sense of rightness that doesn't need urgency to validate it. Many people mistake intensity for truth, but intensity is often friction between identity layers. Authenticity tends to be calmer. This can feel confusing at first, especially if you've learned to equate desire with striving. When striving quiets, you may wonder if motivation has disappeared. It hasn't. It's reorganizing. The mirror doesn't amplify desire by making it louder. It amplifies it by making it clearer. As authentic signals emerge, borrowed ones begin to feel strangely hollow, not wrong, just unnecessary. You might notice that certain goals lose emotional charge without conscious decision. They simply stop pulling. Others, previously overlooked, begin to feel quietly magnetic. This isn't preference shifting. It's alignment revealing itself. Your energetic blueprint has always been transmitting. What's changing now is your ability to feel it without interference, to sense when desire arises from coherence rather than compensation. The mirror reflects authenticity with ease because authenticity is internally consistent. It doesn't need reinforcement, it sustains itself. This is why acceleration becomes possible here, not through urgency but through signal clarity. When desire and identity agree, reality organizes with less resistance. You're no longer asking the mirror to become something else. You're allowing it to reflect something truer. This recognition doesn't demand action. It invites intimacy with your own signal. And as that intimacy deepens, something subtle happens. The question shifts from what do I want to what feels like me when nothing is being performed. And the mirror responds accordingly, not immediately, accurately, because it has always been reflecting your deepest self. You're simply beginning to recognize it. As recognition stabilizes, attention naturally drops lower, out of narrative, out of explanation. What begins to matter now isn't what you think about yourself, but how you are carried moment to moment. The blueprint reveals itself not as belief, but as embodiment. Before thought forms, the body already knows the state it's inhabiting. Breath sets tempo, muscles hold memory. The nervous system establishes safety or vigilance long before intention appears. This is where identity actually lives, not as a concept you can describe, but as a pattern of regulation moving through your system. The field reads this immediately, without translation. Your energetic blueprint is the sum of these signals: how quickly you settle, how you respond to uncertainty, how open or guarded attention feels by default. These are not traits, they are states, and they matter more than visualization ever could because they are continuous. They don't turn off when focus drifts. They persist through ordinary moments, shaping coherence quietly. Many people try to change reality by adjusting thoughts, while the body remains braced in an old orientation. The mirror reflects the bracing, not the words layered on top. Always, this isn't a problem to solve. It's an order to recognize. The energetic blueprint predates language. It formed through lived experience, repetition, and adaptation, and because it lives below conscious control, it often feels like just how I am. But that's an assumption, not a fact. When attention begins to rest here, you may notice subtle contrasts. Moments where the body feels settled without reason. Others where tension arises without explanation. These contrasts are information. They reveal where identity is coherent and where it's compensating, where your system feels safe being itself and where it's still negotiating acceptance or outcome. The quantum mirror responds powerfully at this level because coherence becomes tangible, not conceptual, somatic. You don't have to change the blueprint directly. In fact, trying too often reinforces it. What matters is noticing how it behaves when it's seen. Awareness brings choice without force. As the body senses being witnessed rather than corrected, it naturally reorganizes, not dramatically, subtly. Regulation increases, signals smooth. The frequency you carry becomes less noisy. This is why manifestation accelerates here without effort. The mirror reflects coherence because coherence is finally present. You're no longer transmitting mixed messages. You're transmitting a state. This is not about perfection, it's about consistency. The more often you recognize the blueprint as a living signal rather than a fixed identity, the more fluid it becomes. And fluid systems adapt efficiently. At this stage, alignment no longer feels like something you do. It feels like something you allow. The mirror doesn't need to be convinced. It needs to be met. And you're beginning to meet it from the place where your deepest self has always been. Broadcasting. At some point, noticing turns into something more intimate. Not action, contact. This is where recalibration occurs, not because you decide to change, but because coherence invites itself forward. The mirror doesn't demand adjustment, it responds to presence. When attention rests inside the blueprint, the mirror becomes less conceptual and more experiential. You don't imagine stepping into it, you sense yourself already there. The recalibration isn't dramatic, there are no fireworks. What changes is tone. You may notice moments when the internal signal feels unusually clean. Thoughts soften. The body settles without instruction. The sense of trying briefly disappears. This is resonance. Resonance doesn't require effort because it's not an achievement. It's a condition where identity, desire, and embodiment momentarily agree. Nothing is pulled forward. Nothing is pushed away. The mirror reflects this immediately, though not always in visible form. Sometimes as timing, sometimes as ease. Sometimes as the absence of friction you expected to feel. This is important to understand. Recalibration is not about removing blocks like obstacles. It's about dissolving dissonance by no longer feeding it attention. What loses resistance loses density. Dissonance survives through internal argument, through self-correction, through effortful improvement. When those soften, the signal simplifies. The quantum mirror doesn't amplify intensity, it amplifies clarity, and clarity feels almost boring at first, especially if you're used to emotional charge as proof of movement. But beneath that neutrality, something stabilizes. You begin to feel the difference between forcing alignment and inhabiting it. One tightens, the other opens. This recalibration doesn't happen once. It happens in pulses. Moments of coherence followed by drift, then recognition again. That's not failure, that's integration. Each time resonance is felt, the nervous system learns a new baseline, not through instruction, through experience. The mirror reflects this learning by responding faster with less contradiction. patterns simplify. Responses become cleaner. You're not collapsing reality into shape. You're removing the noise that prevented collapse in the first place. And here's the subtle shift that matters most. You stop asking whether you're aligned. You start sensing when you're not. The difference is profound. Alignment no longer feels like a goal. It feels like a home frequency you occasionally drift from and naturally return to. Without drama, the mirror doesn't need maintenance. It needs honesty. When you meet it without performance, without urgency, without trying to become something else, it reflects you more clearly than ever. And in that clarity, probabilities begin to reorganize, not because you demanded them to, because coherence made space. This is where acceleration quietly begins, not as speed, as inevitability born of alignment. When coherence stabilizes, something curious happens to time, not in clocks, in experience. The waiting you once felt between intention and response begins to soften, not because events rush forward, but because resistance no longer stretches the gap. The system feels closer to itself. This is where the language of probability becomes useful, not as physics lesson, but as metaphor for organization. Before alignment, many potentials exist but remain diffuse. They don't know where to land. The observer effect spoken of in quantum terms points toward a simple pattern. What is consistently observed, embodied, and stabilized tends to organize, not instantly, reliably. The mirror doesn't select outcomes. It allows coherence to do the selecting. When your internal signal is fragmented, potential realities receive mixed instructions. They hover, they hesitate, they appear partially, then dissolve. But when coherence increases, something else becomes possible. Potential doesn't need to be chased. It recognizes a stable landing point. This is not mysticism replacing logic, it's pattern recognition. Systems organize around clarity because clarity reduces informational friction. Whether in nervous systems, ecosystems, or lived experience, coherence allows movement with less waste. The quantum mirror functions as a sorting surface here, not choosing for you, but reflecting which potentials match the signal you're sustaining. The clearer the signal, the fewer mismatches occur. This is why manifestation appears to accelerate without effort at this stage. Not because reality is speeding up, but because fewer false starts are occurring. Less backtracking, less contradiction. You may notice that opportunities arrive already shaped. Conversations unfold with unexpected precision. Decisions feel obvious rather than debated. This isn't luck, it's efficiency. When identity, embodiment, and desire align, the observer becomes stable. And stability collapses probabilities naturally, not all at once. Not dramatically, but consistently. The mirror doesn't respond to excitement. It responds to steadiness. This can feel anticlimactic if you were expecting fireworks. But beneath the calm, something profound is happening. You are no longer scattering attention across many possible selves. You are inhabiting one clearly enough for reality to meet it. This is the difference between hoping and hosting. The field responds to what is being lived, not what is being rehearsed. And when the lived state becomes coherent, response requires less negotiation. You're not bending reality, you're removing the bends within yourself that distorted the reflection. At this stage, manifestation stops feeling like creation and starts feeling like recognition, as if what arrives was already implied by the state you were carrying. This doesn't eliminate uncertainty, it changes your relationship to it. Uncertainty becomes space rather than threat. Potential becomes available rather than overwhelming. And the mirror continues reflecting faithfully, efficiently, without preference. Not because you earned it, because coherence made it possible. The acceleration you notice isn't force, it's alignment catching up with itself. Eventually, something shifts in how you interpret what's happening, not the events themselves, your relationship to their timing. What once felt surprising begins to feel quietly appropriate, not miraculous, accurate. This is where many people misread acceleration. They look for spectacle, for sudden reversals, or dramatic arrivals, assuming speed must announce itself loudly. But the mirror doesn't dramatize coherence, it normalizes it. When alignment stabilizes, outcomes stop feeling like rewards and start feeling like continuations, as if reality is simply completing sentences you've already begun speaking through your state. You may notice this in small ways. First, a conversation that resolves itself without effort, a decision that requires no internal debate, an opportunity that appears exactly when resistance would have previously complicated it. These moments don't feel magical, they feel obvious, and that's the clue. Acceleration through alignment rarely registers as something special is happening. It registers as this makes sense. The absence of friction becomes more noticeable than the presence of gain. Stories of rapid manifestation often miss this nuance. They focus on the external change while ignoring the internal quiet that made it possible. But from inside the process, the speed feels secondary. What matters is the lack of struggle. You're no longer negotiating with reality, you're meeting it. The mirror reflects this by responding with fewer contradictions, less detour, less delay born of mixed signals. This doesn't mean everything flows perfectly. Challenges still arise, uncertainty still exists. But the difference is subtle and profound. When disruption appears, it doesn't destabilize identity, it informs it. You no longer interpret obstacles as signs of misalignment. You read them as data points within a coherent system. Feedback, not failure. This changes how quickly systems reorganize around you. Because panic slows coherence, curiosity sustains it. At this stage, manifestation stops being something you track. You don't count days or measure outcomes. You notice patterns instead. How quickly things resolve once noticed. How little effort is required once alignment is restored. How rarely you feel the need to convince anything. Acceleration becomes relational, not linear. It shows up as responsiveness rather than speed. The mirror reflects this responsiveness faithfully. When you shift, it shifts. When you settle, it settles. There's a maturity here that often goes unspoken. You stop needing proof that it works because your experience no longer argues with itself. And when proof is no longer required, reality stops performing. It simply responds. This is where manifestation loses its drama and gains its power, not as control, as coherence lived consistently. The mirror hasn't changed. You have. And now what reflects back carries less distortion, less delay, less noise. Not because you demanded acceleration, because alignment made resistance unnecessary. What remains is a sense of being met, quietly, reliably. And from here, the question is no longer how fast things arrive. It's how you choose to live inside the reflection that's already responding. There comes a moment when the process stops feeling like a process at all. Not because everything is resolved, but because something fundamental has stabilized. You are no longer checking the mirror. You are living as the reflection. This is subtle, easy to miss. The question of alignment doesn't disappear, but it loses urgency. It becomes a background awareness rather than a task, a sensitivity rather than a strategy. Daily life continues, responsibilities remain. External circumstances still fluctuate, but your relationship to them has changed. When coherence is lived rather than visited, realignment happens faster and with less drama. Disruption no longer triggers self-abandonment. It invites recalibration. You may notice that when things feel off, you don't rush to fix the outer picture. Attention naturally returns to state, to breath, to the tone of your inner environment, not as correction, as listening. This is how the mirror stays clear. Sustaining alignment isn't about holding a high frequency or maintaining constant calm. That would be another form of effort. Instead, it's about recognizing when coherence drifts and allowing it to settle again. The nervous system becomes an ally here. It signals when you're pushing, performing, or bracing, and because you've felt resonance before, you know what returning feels like. Challenges still appear, but they land differently. They don't threaten identity, they test flexibility. And flexibility is coherence in motion. The ripple effect begins quietly. As your internal state stabilizes, interactions shift without explanation. People respond differently. Conversations soften or sharpen appropriately. Boundaries clarify without force. You're not influencing others deliberately. You're changing the field you occupy. The quantum mirror reflects this outward as relational coherence. Less misunderstanding, less friction born of projection, more accurate resonance. This isn't about becoming perfect or untouchable. It's about becoming readable. When your internal signal is clear, others don't have to guess who they're meeting, and systems respond efficiently to clarity. Living as the reflection means you stop outsourcing stability to outcomes. You don't wait for reality to confirm alignment. You feel alignment first. This doesn't make you passive, it makes you precise. Decisions emerge from state rather than fear. Action arises when it's appropriate, not when it's compensatory. And when you drift, as all systems do, the return is gentler, faster, less loaded with meaning. The mirror continues to reflect faithfully, not because you're doing something right, but because you're being something true. This is the quiet conclusion most manifestation teachings never reach, that the point was never to get reality to change faster. It was to become someone reality could respond to clearly. You haven't mastered the mirror. You've stopped fighting it. And in that relationship, life begins to move with you rather than against you. Not perfectly, but coherently. Nothing new needs to happen now. That's the first thing to notice. When understanding reaches this depth, it doesn't ask for application. It asks for space. You may sense a quiet settling, not because every question has been answered, but because the pressure to answer them has softened. The mirror doesn't require vigilance. It reflects regardless. What you've recognized isn't a method to repeat or a state to hold. It's a relationship that continues on its own. A way of noticing how life responds when you stop arguing with your own signal. From here, coherence becomes less about alignment and more about honesty. When something feels off, you notice it without urgency. When something feels right, you let it be right without trying to secure it. This is how the reflection stays clear. The quantum mirror doesn't demand maintenance. It stays accurate as long as you stay present with yourself. Not perfect, present. There will be moments when old patterns resurface. They always do. Not as regression, but as invitations to recognize how far your baseline has shifted. You'll notice the difference not in how quickly things arrive, but in how little they need to prove themselves. Life will feel less like negotiation and more like conversation. And conversations don't need to be rushed. If something hasn't arrived yet, it doesn't mean alignment has failed. It may simply mean the signal is still clarifying, or that the timing belongs to coherence rather than desire. Trust grows quietly here. Not blind trust. Familiar trust. The kind that comes from watching patterns respond accurately over time. You are not responsible for collapsing every possibility. You're responsible for inhabiting your state honestly. The mirror handles the rest. As you move forward, nothing needs to be remembered consciously. Recognition leaves its own imprint. You'll find yourself pausing differently, responding rather than reacting, letting clarity guide movement without needing to explain why. This isn't the end of a process. It's the easing of a misunderstanding. You were never trying to make life reflect something foreign. You were learning to see what it has been reflecting all along. And now, with less effort, less noise, and less urgency, you're free to live inside that reflection. not as a technique, as yourself.